Welcome to the Life Success and Legacy Podcast. We're glad you're here, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the next episode of the Life Success and Legacy Podcast. My name is Chris Bay, and I am joined again by the three Mikes. Gentlemen, how are you this morning?
Awesome. Good morning.
Kwong, you've been doing some fun reading this morning?
Yeah, just prepping up for our conversation today.
So our topic today actually comes from a boot camp that we did this weekend. I don't know when this will release, but as of the time of recording, we did a live virtual boot camp this weekend, and we got some fantastic questions. And Crawford's always great about snatching those good questions that we can use as content for the podcast. So Mike Everett, while I'm talking here, are you pulling up a slide?
I'm already there.
You're ready to roll? Okay. So today what we want to do is unpack a little bit the modified endowment contract line and then different varieties of designs of policies, how we tend to design policies for clients, including ourselves, how we design our policies. And then oftentimes, and this came from the boot camp, is why do we not design policies super aggressive for cash value in the first year? And so we're going to try to do our best to unpack how we think about this based on our training and understanding of Nelson's teachings and our experience, not only with designing policies. Crawford, you've done how many illustrations over the years? Tons. But then also clients from other folks who have come to us with policies designed pretty aggressive and what happens with that. So to start off with, Mike Everett, I was looking back in Nelson's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, on page 38, and he talks about and has an illustration of different ways policies can be designed and their relationship to the modified endowment contract line. So can you take us back to table level to the basics and just teach us what is that MEC line and how are policies designed?
Well, I'm going to pull up a slide because it makes it way easier for people to understand.
And just for our listeners, you use this in the webinar.
I absolutely do.
So this is the kind of teaching that we do when you sign up for a webinar.
Yeah. So I'm going to go, first of all, I'm going to talk about the modified endowment contract, because here's what ends up happening. Nelson did a deep dive early on with multiple illustrations. And he arrived at either the 40-60 split, 40 base, 60% PUA, or even 50-50. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at kind of the 260-year timeline of the life insurance industry. We're going to talk about a few kinds of policies so you can get an understanding of why IBC, why Life Success and Legacy, and why IBC would work for you and your family. So in the midst of all of this, golly, you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to go through the actual thing that I talk about. So there are all kinds of policies on this timeline, by the way, but we're only going to touch on a few so you can get kind of a 30,000-foot view of why we do what we do. So we're going to talk about the 20-pay life paid up at 65, and ordinary life. Those are really all the same kinds of policies. The only difference is, as you go to the left on the continuum, the time period gets shorter. This is about as basic as you can get. If these were $500,000 life insurance policies and you died, somebody you love got $500,000. This is literally not rocket science. So those are really a few of the ways, but here's the crazy thing. Ordinary life is really whole life insurance. You pay the premium for your whole life. I can't say it any different. Life paid up at 65, you pay the premium to age 65, and 20 pay life, you pay it for 20 years. It's that simple, okay? whole life insurance. But what ended up happening was the Great Depression came along and nobody had any money. So what they did was they created term life insurance. Little tiny premium, great big death benefit. You would be amazed at the percentage of people that own term life insurance. But here's the crazy thing. It's like renting your home. You only have that life insurance coverage for a very short time. And the crazy thing is less than 0.5% of all term life either makes it to the end of the term or gets paid out in death claims. So who gets the money? Insurance company. They know what they're doing. It's a big profit center. But then in the mid 1970s, the early baby boomers started retiring. But guess what? These guys all came through the Great Depression. They all started learning how to put money into a pension plan, a retirement plan, a 401k. And when they retired, they had buckets of money. But the insurance company goes, wait, we have no place for these people to put their money. So they created single premium life. You could roll out your retirement income tax-free. You could live off the interest income tax-free. And when you died, the principal went to your family income tax-free. It was seriously like hitting 3 home runs in a row. But this is the crazy thing about what ended up happening. This was the mid 1970s. By summer of 1988, the IRS jumped in here and said, wait a second, we're not getting our fair share of that money. So guess what they did in the summer in 1988? They said, if you put money in this thing and you utilize this money, we're going to call it a modified endowment contract, and we're going to start getting our fair share of income taxes on the growth of these things. Now, 260 plus years, there has been one major change. Happened in 1988. This is the beautiful thing about what Nelson discovered. He realized that you could actually take the old school whole life insurance policy and you could increase the cash value and decrease the death benefit because it works better for banking. Now, it is whole life insurance. I cannot stress that enough. It is dividend paying whole life insurance. So this is exactly what Nelson taught me, which now we teach you. We're going to get as close to this modified endowment contract line without crossing it, because we don't want it to become an investment where you have to pay income taxes. Basic. But now we're going to get to what we're talking about today. Okay, so I'm going to jump off of this so I can start playing with these things. So what ends up happening is all of these things are in Nelson's book, by the way. If you go and you study the twins, if you go and study equipment financing, you'll realize why Nelson landed where he landed. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a system, a whole life insurance policy, so it will last your entire life, your whole life. So once again, we get a number of people that come to us and they say, hey, you know what? I've been listening to podcasts all over the country, and there's a ton of people talking about increasing the cash value on the front end of the policy. And the only way to do that is you have to flood load more dollars into your paid up addition rider. Is that long-term thinking? It is not. Principle number 1, think long-term. So what ends up happening is a lot of these factions out there are out there designing these policies at 1090, but the only way to what ends up happening is if you're designing it with that much cash value on the front end, and I'm going to get really close to that modified endowment contract, you are jeopardizing possibly the greatest thing that's happened with the infinite banking concept. Because if you make one wrong move, this thing jumps onto the other side of the modified endowment contract line, and it becomes an investment, and every dollar that comes out of that thing becomes a taxable event, and you can't go back. So life success and legacy, we are built on trusting long-term relationships, period. If we are educating you, if we are teaching you, if you are actually growing and learning about the infinite banking concept, you realize that life success and legacy is in your corner. So what ends up happening is we want to take a couple of full steps away from that modified endowment contract and not try to jeopardize this thing ever to become a modified endowment contract, and you have to pay taxes on this thing. So what ends up happening is there's a number of different ways to play the game. I would say that our average client does either a 40 base, 60 PUA, or a 50 base and a 50% PUA. Now, I've gone full circle on this whole deal because we literally don't want to play with a system that we know will work, not just today, but 30 and 40 years from now. Now, I'm not going to be here 30 or 40 years from now, but my kids and my grandkids are, and I don't want to put them in a situation to where all of a sudden they can't function with their own system to finance cars, to finance marriages, to finance homes. So bounce pass back over to you, Chris Bay, because that gives people really great big picture of why we design the policy the way we do, and we drag it right out of Nelson's book.
Yeah, and don't make that slide go away quite yet, Mike.
All right.
Because I want to be real clear on this. If you play around with those two elements, the paid up edition rider and the base premium, right? Because that's what Nelson introduced in the design of the policy. A traditional whole life policy is going to be way out there on the right hand side, right? So slide that arrow way out there to the right. That's going to be your just ordinary life with no paid up edition rider. You're going to get a whole bunch of death benefit, but you're not going to get much equity or cash value in the first 10,
20.
15 years.
Yeah, actually 20.
But if we flip that and we actually go to a 10% base and a 90% PUA, that actually would go past the line, Mike, go all the way into the MEC, because we got to talk about the term rider.
Oh, that's right.
So if you do a 1090 or a 2080, you're going to actually start over in the MEC category. So to design a policy that is not a MEC, that's aggressive, you have to add a massive term rider in order to bump up the death benefit high enough so that the relationship between the death benefit and the cash value has enough wiggle room so it doesn't become a MEC. So we actually drag that arrow back over to the right side of that MEC line by adding a massive term rider, which bumps up the death benefit and makes it a non-MEC. But it's still very, very close to that MEC line.
So
okay?
I wanna tell people, when you say massive term rider, this is $500,000, this is $1 million, this is sometimes a $2 million term rider. It has to be a great big number in order to get that MEC line not to be in jeopardy.
Yeah.
On the front end.
Right. And so we actually, over our years of playing around with illustrations, we actually early on would even add term. We would still do like a 40-60, but because of, say, someone's age, health issues, or they wanted a really aggressive, we would add a little term rider just to get a little bit more efficient. And we've stopped doing that because it's not worth it for that little extra. In fact, Mike Kwong, well, I want to say two things. Crawford always says there are no deals in life insurance, right? And I always think of like levers. If you pull on one lever, the other one goes in. If you pull on another lever, the other one goes in. Like you're going, if you gain something, you're going to give up something, right? Yeah. So Kwong, this weekend, you did a really fantastic job, I thought, of talking through what an illustration looks like and how quickly does that illustration get super efficient. Can you recap some of that for us?
Sure. I start with the premise that these policies, as they're built, just like, Mike Everett said, they are built for life, right? And you build it to the principle of thinking long-term. These are permanent assets. And I think personally, the ultimate permanent asset. I mean, but when you have an illustration, what you're showing, on a year-to-year basis is the evolution of that policy as the premiums are being paid into it. And because of the nature of the policy, it becomes more and more efficient each year. So the cash values, the death benefit grows, right? It's almost like I call it, it's a living thing. It's organic because it's growing, right? That death benefit, as I explained, as a tree, unlike a term policy that's a dead pole, right? That doesn't change for the 20 years. This is a living tree that every year gets taller and taller and taller. And the cash value is a reflection of that tree as like a shadow all the way to the present. And in the beginning, right, you're far away from the tree, right? So there's that huge delta that is being overcome year over year as the premiums are being paid, as the policy is rolling into its efficiency, right? Every dollar in is giving you more and more of additional cash value and death benefit through the PUAs and through the prepaid, pre-calculated base premiums. So, yeah.
Good explanation. So, Crawford, I know you have played around, and Mike Everett and I did early on as well with different illustrations. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about those, and in the context of, we actually have clients from other IBC groups that will come to us with policies that have been designed for aggressively value with these massive term riders. And all of a sudden that term ride time to fall off or be repaid or whatever, and they're like, what can I do about this, right? So can you talk a little bit about what you have seen with your experimenting with illustration designs?
Yeah, so you'd already mentioned it earlier when I first kind of learned about IBC and all that stuff. I read the Nelson design as like the be all end all, and it is. Like we still design everything with a 40 base 60 PUA, but we were super strict about it in the beginning. And the way that the illustration software would work is it would automatically bump you out away from the mech line. So let's say I put in 4,000 base 6,000 PUA. The original older software that we would use would automatically bump it. So if the person's age or health or the rating or whatever pushed it out, it would now say 4,500 base, and 5,500 PUA. Well, in order to counteract that, you couldn't tell it, no, go ahead and let it mech, because we'd already checked a little box that said, don't allow it to mech.
Right.
But what we would do is we would just start adding little short 10-year term riders. And we would add, 25K at first. Nope, that didn't work. We'd add 50K. Nope, that didn't work. So on and so forth, until we found the size that all of a sudden pushed us to allow the 4,000 and the 6,000 with a couple $100 a year for the term. And that was just the mantra. Like we just sort of like lockstep with them. What we started realizing in, relatively short order, a couple of years in, was it didn't really matter. Like we started looking at the illustrations and going, well, that $4,500 base and 5,500 PUA works just as good. And what's even crazier? 10 years from now, we don't drop 100K in death benefit just because. We may have gained an extra few $100s on the front end in cash value over those first 5, 7, 8 years, but we get to year 10, cash value growth isn't really any better, and we lose 100K in death benefit in that example, right? Whatever that term was. And to Everett and Kwong and even Yubei, the point of these term riders in the beginning is just to push us away. But in the end, what they did was they adversely affected our overall policy's growth. It really was stunted in a multitude of ways. And we started really seeing that. That doesn't mean I even have one that I built for a family member that was built this way. It's going to be fine. It's not the end of the world. It's just not as optimal as what we could be building for them, and what we learned to do moving things forward.
Yeah.
While we're sitting here talking about this stuff, I remember in 2007, I was sitting in my office all by myself, and I started designing policies. I started out with Nelson's 40-60. Then I went to the 50-50. Then I went to the 60-40, 70-30. And then I went the other direction. So I was at 40-60. Then I would put 30-70, 20-80. And I'm going to tell you what, I proved to myself that playing with this internal design really didn't matter. And I think that if you look at life success and legacy historically, we're stuck.
Mm.
And I'm not taking any credit here, because I think Nelson, what he did was he made it utterly apparent that playing with that design does not benefit the client long term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and to that point, benefiting the client is our goal.
Ultimately.
And I mean, we will even we have people who come to us with more traditional whole life policies. Maybe they don't even have a PUA on it. They've had this policy for 10, 15, 20 years. We actually will show them that, okay, it's now mature. It actually is a great policy down the road. It probably wasn't great in the first 5 to 10 years for banking, but now, because you've had it long enough and that base has really generated cash value and death benefit, it actually could be a really good tool. And we just show them how to use that policy then.
It's really a tremendous asset.
Right. So on that note, what I want to do is just talk about how we have designed our own policies, because like Crawford said, if we've studied these designs, right, and we've played around and we say, people can listen to us, we can say, oh, we do what's best for clients, right? Well, okay, well, how do you actually design your own policies, right? And as Kwong says, well, we eat our own cooking, right? So let's just real quickly go around. How have you designed your policies in your own system?
Well, I would say 90% of mine are 40-60. 40% base, 60 PUA, but over the last number of years, I've gone to a 50-50. Personally.
Yeah.
The business bought a couple of policies on me, and we did 60 base, 40 PUA. Why? Because we didn't need the cash value, and what we were trying to do is prop up the death benefit.
Yeah.
Because I'm obviously the next one out, so it would just generate dollars into the business if I die. So
well, and because of your age, we would have had to have added a term rider to make it more aggressive, to get to a 40-60, right?
Right.
But then that's just, we don't need that term rider.
Right.
And so we just went ahead and let it design how it would without a term. So that's where it ended up.
So I'm gonna say this for our listeners, and this is it's tongue in cheek, but every one of us are authorized practitioners. We have done the study, we have done the investigation, we have done all of the necessary parameters to figure out what is truly best for the client. In fact, there has been a couple of full years over the last, I'm going to say 6 or 8 years, that the main theme at the Nelson Nash think tank was think long term, was about the design of the policies, and not try to, I'm going to use an aggressive word here, bastardize the policy in order to scrounge up some dollars on the front end. Yeah. That's a little aggressive. Authorized practitioners right here, 4 guys hanging out.
Mike Kwong, how have you designed your policy? Have you wavered at all in your design over the years?
Not really, just like Everett, right? We started just like, we learned about, from reading Nelson's book, and, even before we met you guys, 40-60 for as long as, and as many years as, I could, adding more policies. We stayed to that. Of course, you get to a tipping point roughly around age 44, 45, where that naturally, starts to, hit up.
You seeing that, Crawford?
And this is all, again, without term, right? Because 40-60 is easy when you're, 40 and below, right? And as a matter of fact, when you're even younger, that 40-60, you can extend out beyond 4 years. Right?
Yep.
As far as it's a push-pull, like Crawford says. I think of it like a water balloon. You squeeze one end, the other end's going to pop up, right? It's this kind of deal. So yeah, we stayed with the 40/60 and then performed beautifully. As I got, older, as we all do, yeah, I'm now 50/50 and I'm okay with that. I don't need, that I call it a temporary prop of death benefit from the term, right?
Yeah.
Maybe cheap, but what do you get for that, right? You get that early, extra PUA in, but we understand it's the base premium where all that efficiency is built upon, and continues to grow. So yeah.
And Crawford, if you'll talk a little bit about how your policies have been designed over the years, but then also you did a policy for a family member that you flipped it up.
Yeah, I mean, we started, of course, my first policy was 40/60. I was, I don't know, 33 or something like that. And so it was 40 base, 60 PUA, and, driving hard to the hoop. And then, a few years later, started opening new policies. And by this time, excuse me, by this time, like I'd said, we had started realizing that term riders weren't necessarily the be all end all for the best design. Not bad, just not always the best in the design world for that. And I started looking at long term, and I thought Nelson's first principle says think long term, right? And so, instead of just looking at the first 5 years of my illustration, I started looking at the first 15 or 20. And I thought, okay, what if I did this at 50/50, even if I was in my late 30s, and now in my nearly my mid 40s. And so I mean, I don't even hesitate. It's 50/50 now. And I say that because, yes, I want the cash. Duh. I want to use it. I want to apply it in my life, income stacking, whatever it is. But at the same time, I know that if I have the willingness to take one step backwards to go 10 steps forward, it's so worth it. And so that's how I do mine. Now, with my mom and dad, when I designed their policies, they were debt free. Dad was about to retire. Mom still works or, was working at the time, and she still does. But it wasn't so much that they needed the cash. And so when we were designing them, I told them that we would build these 60 base, 40 PUA, because again, they didn't need it in the beginning to fund some big debt reduction or anything like that. And what we did was, now that Dad passed, but Mom's policy is becoming much more mature. She could utilize that cash to support family adventures or things of that nature, and she can start seeing the benefits of it. It just took a couple of years to capitalize. Big whoop,
This is good stuff, you guys. I love this conversation. I love, in fact, we got some feedback after the boot camp that one of the values of the boot camp is when someone asks a question during the Q&A, they get to hear all of our different angles at answering it. I tend to be very simplistic and like to draw pictures. Kwong's doing his arborist analogies and things like that. Crawford's pulling out the numbers and the illustrations. And then Everett always takes us back to Nelson, the history, BYOB and all that. But that was the feedback we got is, wow, because you all come at it from different angles, you're probably going to touch on an angle that works for the learners that are out there. So to our listeners, we're hopeful that these conversations that you get to sit in on, which it's kind of like just one of our team meetings, right? We're just sitting around talking about this stuff and how can we make it better for clients and thinking about it. So any final words on MEC and policy design before we wrap up?
I have one final thing that I was thinking about. IBC is not sexy, but we have a number of people that come to us and they're looking for the shiny object. And I'm telling you what, if you're a shiny object person, then Life, Success, and Legacy is not the right fit for you. We know this already. We have done our study. We have done our investigation. We have done all of the education that amounts to us doing something for you and your family that's, once again, not going to work good for just today, but 20 and 30 years from now. That is truly what Nelson has deposited in me and now us. And let me tell you what, this conversation, it makes a proud father. It's really cool to hear my guys and my team go, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. So not that I'm happy. I'm ecstatic.
So Mike Everett, you got to start prepping. This week we've got Grands Camp, right?
Oh, dude, it starts tomorrow. We are filling our house with stuff that we would not normally fill. In fact, yesterday, this is the theme of the Grands Camp is space.
Oh,
space, man. The final frontier.
Let me tell you what, I bought a big telescope.
Oh, cool.
You know, with one of these great big, we're going to be sitting out on the deck, out on the pool deck going, okay, let's get the cheese on the moon. We want to find it. We've got little rubber balls that all look like planets. Mimi has done an unbelievable job of preparing.
She has.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to,
I love it.
I want to know what kind of food we're eating.
Well, Grands Camp will be a blast. We can't wait to hear stories and see pictures of that. Thank you guys for this conversation. We just touched the surface on this.
Oh, yeah.
I know we can go deeper. So we may do a little more homework and come back with a variation on this topic and dig a little deeper. So to our listeners, check us out at lifesuccesslegacy.com. I do want to say we have a live event planned coming up the first weekend of October, and it is called the LSL Community Mastermind. And it is intentional for our existing clients. This is not people who are just trying to figure out what the difference is between a term and a whole life policy, right? These are people who understand, are utilizing it. Now, if you're not an LSL client at this point, there is opportunity for you to still attend the mastermind, but we do have some prerequisites that will help it be a good experience for you, a beneficial experience. And that is, get on our website and sign up for a webinar with Mike Everett. Okay. That's one thing to do. Read Nelson's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. That's another thing you can do. And then thirdly, schedule a consultation with one of us so that we can get to know you, you can get to know us. If you've done those three things, you are primed. Even if you're not a client yet, you're primed to step into the room of the mastermind. The mastermind is really about the community, sharing information, sharing strategies, sharing ideas, sharing questions, successes, failures. What do I wish I would have known back then, right? So it's a group that gets to talk to people who are maybe earlier in the process, and you can give suggestions, but then also asking questions of people who are later in the process as well.
September 19th is also a virtual boot camp. So there's multiple things that you need to do prior to even pondering coming to the mastermind, because it can be overwhelming. We've experienced it when we went down to Houston. People who hadn't done their homework before they got there, and they were overwhelmed.
For example, the conversation we had today about base, PUA, MEC, those kinds of things, the people in the room already understand that.
That's right.
We're not teaching that, right? They understand that. And now it's about, okay, what are the ways that we're using our IBC systems, expanding them and all of that. So we'd love to have people at that mastermind. It's going to be in Kansas City the first weekend of October. You can go to our website and register for that, but do make sure, if you're not a client, make sure you've done those prerequisite steps so that you can get the most out of that experience. Again, it's going to be down on the Country Club Plaza, which is a fantastic area. Friday night, we have a social, and then Saturday is the actual mastermind. So we hope to see your faces there. It's always a great thing. There is no replacement for doing it live and being in the room together and sharing those ideas. We get so excited about those events. So, all right, everybody, thanks for joining us, and we will catch you next time on the Life Success Legacy podcast. Bye, everybody.
Bye.